welcome. Welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Yes, cereal or no cereal.
It's yogurt. It was not cereal, it was yogurt.
Yogurt, yes. Now, that's a fascinating thing you just said, because it reminds me of something a famous starship captain once said. And also,
really?
Yes, it's amazing. And another famous starship captain that we may live to see the light of day of Weekly Adventures, who said, no matter where our mission takes us, we will try to have a little fun along the way.
Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I am Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to figure out who that might be on this episode of Life Support Live, inspired by this week's episode of Star Trek Picard. We're talking about repairing relationships. Now, the inspiration did come from a very small conversation and probably has yet to come to fruition, but that's what we're talking about here, folks. So give us...
But you know what? I started to say we can take a needle into a haystack. That makes no sense. But for our this is our penultimate weekly episode. Yes, this is the dogs of war of of weekly Life Support Live.
So we are. This is our. Speaking of that, it's our penultimate episode. It's the last episode we're doing in a weekly format. Distance. Next week is our grand finale of the weekly format in person. Larry, you're going to be here. You're going to be like right here.
That's amazing. Yes.
I'll put you on this side, so you're.
I'll be right there.
Yeah. Right. Gonna beam you in. Hopefully.
Yes.
Hopefully the Heisenberg compensator will hold. It's been a little tricky lately.
Well, that Heisenberg compensator has been working on overtime the last few years. Period. So I hope I can find a niche of it. Yeah.
There's a lot of Heisenberg to compensate. So, folks, let us know what's your favorite example from Star Trek of a story involving characters repairing a relationship. It could be a friendship, could be a romantic relationship, could be a professional relationship. Let us know.
It could be cultural relationships.
Yes. Yeah.
Societal
between people.
relationships.
Yeah. Absolutely. Larry, this is usually the part of the show where I ask to introduce the show to new people, but if you're new at this point,
but this week you're not going to. No.
Why not, Larry? For old time's sake, if this is someone's first time joining us at Life Support Live, what have they wandered themselves into?
I don't know, but whatever it is, they'll only have to think about it for another time. No, everybody. So Life Support Live, we started this when the pandemic began nearly 2 years ago. It's a weekly visit where we geek out with Star Trek and yet also look at some aspect of mental health, of daily living. It's not a hardcore situation, but we've got our lifers in the audience here. If you are new, we're glad you're here. All the shows are on YouTube, on my YouTube channel where you are right now, Facebook or YouTube. On Twitch, it goes away, just like our attention span with you if you're in the chat, so hang in there. But we have great people in the chat. Jump in, say hello if you're not. We will be looking back and forth, as you're seeing already there. But yeah, we have a lot of fun, and hopefully everybody comes away with something. Ali handles the deep dive on the mental health side. I handle the deep dive on the Star Trek side, and we put it all together. And we actually have structures, and we're right now in the part we call the introduction.
Yes, that would be true. And on this week's episode, we are talking about repairing relationships. So let's open up that briefing room here. This is the part of the show where
I told you. Yeah.
We got a format. This is the part of the show where we explore Star Trek canon as it relates to the theme. So, Larry, not to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but we were talking about this week's episode of Star Trek Picard. By the way, I'm really enjoying season 2 of Picard. I know we're only 2 episodes in, and it feels like the story is just kind of getting out of space dock now. But I've been enjoying it.
It's moving faster than it did in season 1.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 3 episodes in season 1, we were still on Earth. Still
I
drinking
love
a
that. I
lot of
love
Earl
that that's the
Grey.
barometer now that everybody uses. People all say, "Oh my gosh, in season 1 they were still on Earth." I just want to go, what? There's nothing to keep the whole story from happening on Earth.
No, I mean the
Everything
show is called Star Trek. Usually that involves
all
trekking
cold.
in the stars. Well, you don't track in stars. You track in between stars, I guess.
Okay, okay. Well, what? Saul is chopped liver? What? Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I get no, right. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Well, it's Star Trek, and it's about things happening within the realm of the UFP. And the UFP, the United Federation of Planets, has a council in San Francisco and a president's office in Paris. And
Well,
you
you
know,
keep pushing that West Wing concept. West Wing
you
meets Star
pick
Trek.
me up. I'm just saying this could be the unseen, the secret pilot. This is the backdoor pilot. This is the side door. This is the shed door pilot for.
I would love to see that version of Star Trek come out. But yeah, no, I've been really enjoying it, and we're this week's theme it comes from a conversation between Q and Picard at the very beginning of episode 2, season 2 of Star Trek
Oh,
Picard.
spoilers! Q is in this. Okay.
Yes, if you haven't seen the teaser or the trailer or any promotion around the
I
show.
was gonna say any black promotional art everywhere.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, the first teaser was the Q card, which I thought was kind of funny because Q never does. He never plays
I
a
mean,
Q card.
when they send out the box like this with the tag in it.
If you haven't seen that, I'm sorry for having spoiled it. But Picard and Q are having a conversation, and Picard is very annoyed to see Q again, as he always is. You, Q, again! I thought I was done with you a whole body ago. So
There's several cute moments, but yes.
there's some great moments. He's much more agile with his the shh is not as bright anymore. Yeah. Doesn't all of our dim
It's called a
with
Q
age?
flash.
Yeah, the Q flash.
Yeah.
Q flash
Yes.
has dimmed with age a little bit. Anyways, he tells Picard that he needs to repair relationships, make amends, if you will, and
Atone, I think he even says. Yeah.
atone. He needs to atone. Yeah. Now we don't see him do any of that, but we see the
In fact,
consequences
the conversation is only there for 3 or 4 sentences, and the whole time Picard's kind of sputtering, going, "What the hell are you talking about? What?
But it was enough sentences for me to text Larry and say, "I think we got a theme."
Okay, so I went to all the trouble to find it. You have to put it up there. Here's the official source of our theme this week image.
Hold on. Let me pull this up. Larry, I was not ready for images yet. My goodness. Yes, here we go.
What?
It's coming.
You were in the briefing room. What do you mean? You ran the.
I know. I was just mentally.
Someday you'll get this down. I'm sure.
I was mentally.
If we get renewed for enough seasons, you'll get this.
Well, they're just giving these seasons away now.
They're just giving these seasons. Oh, look. He's got a bloody nose. Ooh.
Now, how did he get that bloody nose, Larry?
Well, it wasn't Cisco that hit Q. It was.
No. But we know Cisco is very active in this timeline. And then there's this moment. This is, I think, the exact moment where he demands penance of Picard. Now, this is one of those unusual Q moments. We don't know what he's asking penance for. We don't know why. But we know somehow it's completely changed the timeline.
But we have never seen Picard call bullshit on Q and cut to the point the way we see in this moment, because he literally says bullshit and cut to the point, cut to the chase, I think.
Which you can do when you're on Paramount Plus and living on that mountain of content. So here we are, folks. This is our theme. This is our penultimate theme. And Larry, I should
like it or not.
Like it or not. I think people like it. There's a lot of examples already alive.
Well, that's one thing. That's one of those cases where there's so many examples. I was like, how do we put our arms around this? But I think it's a comfortable amount that we can get to.
I think it's a comfortable amount. We also haven't tackled this topic. We have tackled the topic of resolving conflict.
Yes, but have we toppled the tactic?
We have
Okay.
not toppled the tactic. That's for next week. We're gonna topple things next week. But we haven't tackled this, and this is us coming full circle here. Our very first episode was a look back at season 1 of Star Trek Picard, really talking about trauma and growth.
In his whole life, but yeah.
And here we are now looking forward to season 2 of Star Trek Picard and talking about repairing relationships, making amends, atonement, penance.
In our limited way.
In our limited ways, yeah. So
well, I mean, we have 1 more week, so yeah.
Yeah, so it's very limited. So we've got there's a lot of examples that we can dive into here, Larry. And there's a few that really popped up into our head as we were prepping here. So where should we start this discussion?
Well, I started with original series. Just chronologically, I went to original series movies first.
Yeah.
And then you immediately echoed it. Although they're in the series themselves, there are moments like, for one, if the number one in the original series probably has to be Sarek and Spock.
Yeah.
And it's a baby steps. But we overblow that all the time. So I went to one that's
and would you say it's repaired in that moment? You're talking about Journey to Babel, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Oh, do I have to mention episodes of original series? Okay, then.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You do. They deserve their respect.
I know. No, you mean the audience? Of course, I respect the original series episode. No. Yes, the end of Journey to Babel, where Spock and his dad have been estranged, as his mother points out, for it's either 14 or 18 years. I forget. One is the span of time between the series and Back to the Cage, and one is the span of time that Sarek and Spock have been estranged. But it starts to thaw. And then by the time we get to Star Trek 3, which is the very next time we even see Sarek, when he's not wearing Klingon clothes, it's thawed a while, but they're still rather stiff around each other. But there's a relationship there that's bounced back where they can at least talk to each other. And however Vulcan it is versus however actually close they are. But, they still stand apart and regard each other at the end of Star Trek 3. But
yeah.
It starts to thaw here in Journey to Babel.
And boy, is it a slow thawing out. I mean, it continues into Next Generation.
Picard, for a hot planet, it's amazingly slow, but yeah.
Picard, those Vulcans, they really like to take their time.
Well, they've known humans for 200 years, and it took that long for Ponfar to pop out. But go ahead.
Yeah. So we're the first episode, or the first idea that we really came up with was right here, Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. And so we're really talking about the repairing of the relationship. Well, is it even was there a relationship prior? I think this is really
we were talking about Kirk and Klingons in general, just kind of Kirk's cultural awareness or what that relationship. It wasn't with individual Klingons per se. It was Kirk versus the Klingons, and whatever the filter he dealt with all back when they were just cardboard cutout villains. After they killed David, when you give the Klingons a big budget, they get foreheads and they start killing your kid. That's something to come back from. So it's like, gosh, we gave you this big budget, more makeup chairs, and this is how you repay us. But in this movie, you start to see the beginnings of that. And of course, it was pushed by Spock. But anyway, that's kind of in a mental, cultural, prejudicial, I say relationship. When you repair a bias, that's part of what I'm thinking here too. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
It's too late now. I said it. Okay.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. If we kind of break it down a little bit further, and not to just re-summarize the whole movie, but there are important circumstances here that have changed. The Klingons can no longer afford the Cold War they have with the Federation. They need humanitarian aid. They need support. And the Federation realizes it's in their best interests to become friends with the Klingons rather than to let that society
Well, most of the Federation
Most of the
rebels.
Federation, except Colonel. What's his name? What's his name, Larry? Re-
Colonel West.
Colonel West, Renee's character. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
It's the creepy caretaker. No, kids. I would have got away with it too if it hadn't been for those creepy old guys. Yeah. Okay.
It's the guys from Mission Impossible. No, 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 no. Other Paramount property. Um, so
The
it
Paris who was not in Voyager. Yes.
right, right. There's factions that do not want this peace, but they realize it's in the Federation's best interest to provide stability in the region and to demilitarize and to become friends here. Now, Larry, this is I didn't expect to go in this direction here, but this was inspired by real world events in the fall of the Soviet Union and the ending of the Cold War. And now here we are, just about 20 years later, and
Yeah.
we're seeing a major resurgence of
Just about 30 years later.
just about. Oh my gosh, you're right.
Sorry.
No, you're right. I
The only thing
forgot
worse
a
than the
decade.
news is the math.
I
Okay.
forgot a decade. Whoops. Oh my gosh. Well, the
Yeah.
90s were a wild time. The
Yeah.
information superhighway and all that.
.com go boom. Okay. .com go bust. Yeah.
But here we are. We're seeing probably one of the biggest resurgence of some of the
Yeah.
Cold War type of conflict that we had with the war that Russia's waged against Ukraine. I mean, I guess you could say that if we map that on to Star Trek, we see elements of increased Klingon hostilities in Next Generation a little bit, but especially in DS9 with Way of the Warrior. We know that some of that was orchestrated by the Dominion, but some of that was tapping into sentiments in the Klingon Empire as well. So I think it's
Yeah. It's a great way to diversify the species without talking about where are their bumps in the back of their skulls. I mean, it's cultural, psychological, but it's a great way to say that there's not this iconoclast, there's not this monolithic Klingon, that it has factions. Well, the Duras sisters they're kind of out for themselves.
They are.
But they lead a faction that's fractious. It's a
Yes.
fractious faction. Yes.
It's a fractious, right? And now we have a weapon of unlimited power. Yes.
I am the
Page
very model of a fractious factual Klingon. I know. Okay, sorry.
That's 2 movies later.
I didn't know where that was going, but okay. Oh, yeah.
Do we ever?
No, it's 1890s. Okay. Yes. So, as we started to talk about the old, we love for 30 years, we've said, oh, look, it's an old Cold War paradigm, parallel metaphor. But the events of the last few weeks and months are rather sobering. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you do repair some of these relationships, and sometimes there are people who don't want it. So let's
And I also think it's safe to say that the current situation is about individuals, because I think the vast majority of, I'll say, the Russian people aren't in favor of this at all. So there you go.
Yeah. I agree, Laurie. Let's talk about another. This was a really complicated one in Star Trek, but it was sort of the second example. I think you came up with this example, Larry, and I think someone in our chats also brought it up as well. So Kira and Damar, and by extension,
No bar, no Kanar.
no bar,
This
no
is
canard.
true.
This is
It's
just
pretty sober.
Korea, Akira, and Damar. Let's see who mentioned this over here. Yeah, it was Zahir. So Zahir said, Zahir said Kira and Dukat. I always thought it was weird how they worked together, considering what Dukat did to her family and people.
Yeah, but that was short-lived, apparently.
Yeah,
No.
that did not last long. But we do
Ducat
see.
could not handle being a nice guy. It was just, yeah.
Yeah, Ducat's got some stuff going on. But the Damar Kira relationship is a real fascinating. I mean, Damar again, I think You can say this about so many characters in DS9, but he is
That they're a cold-blooded murderer? Oh,
well, yes. You can say that about so many characters in DS9 too, but also, a character that starts so small and becomes so consequential to the events of the galaxy. But we see him as a Cardassian, true patriot. He kills ZL, and then becomes the de facto leader of the Cardassians during the Dominion War, and then gives all that up to fight for Cardassia against the Dominion, and
mhm.
allies with Kira to learn everything they developed during the Bajoran occupation to use against the Dominion. I mean, what?
So we call a very full circle coming. Yes.
Yeah. So what do you think were the this is also kind of like the Klingons. They didn't really have a pre-existing relationship to be repaired. They developed this new relationship out of the circumstances. But what's going on here, Larry? Because they actually, there's a few scenes where it seems like they actually like working together.
Well, it's like part of this is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of a root there,
Mm-hmm.
but then they have a grudging respect. And also remember that in Damar's little cotillion of underground Cardassians, is it Rousseau? Anyway, there's the Cardassian that's really he's barely there. He's barely there as far as grudgingly accepting Kira, but not really. And the friction builds and builds to where he finally pops off and they finally take care of him. And it kind of forces Damar to go, well, am I going to be a throwback? Are we going to survive? We need help. And it's somewhere between the ego and the pride that he can't let go, much less that he's going to be helped by, not just be helped, but helped by a Bajoran. And it's just too much for him to deal with. And Damar, it kind of puts Damar on the fence it pushes him to one side or the other. And Damar finally has to go with, hey, I want to live to fight another day. Well, at least a few more days. But it pushes him to be the noble side. And so, structurally, you say bye bye to that problematic Cardassian who's a throwback, but shows you the path of either evolve or die, because it's a good thing to do anyway. But in this specific situation right here, it's going to be your undoing. You have to evolve, and that's what Damar does,
Yeah.
right? It kind of like makes it crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah. I think to give credit to both sides here, they both have to look past their own history with each other, and
Hmm.
for Kira, that means really looking past the murder of Zial, and also just in general working with Cardassians. Although she's demonstrated that, like Zahir mentioned, she has demonstrated that in the past. She can work with Cardassians, but she has to look past
Well,
how.
yeah, I mean, Kira's had a lot more weekly time to get used to working with Cardassians. They're not all Goldacott. You
Yeah.
got Garrick, who's at her side, which kind of just fades in the background. The idea that he's a Cardassian in that whole conflict while she's teaching them underground ways, counterinsurgency, it kind of fades back. He's not even like he is a Cardassian. He's almost like a neutral arbiter. But she's had Cardassians come to the station, other Gulls, scientists, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and for
She's
Ducat,
much further along on that curve than
yeah, I
he
think
is.
Ducat, it's a bigger, not Ducat. I'm sorry, for Damar, it's a bigger step. He hasn't quite worked with Cardassians. Um, he grew up believing that everything they're about to do was wrong because these are all the things that the Bajorans did to them. So he has to get
Right.
over all of that sort of stuff. But for both of them, I think the motivation is also clear that there is this larger, greater good. Larry, it seems like a very in many ways similar to the Kirk Klingons example here, where for the larger good of their people, they need to look past each other and they need to look past the wrongs of the past. That seems like a strange DS9 episode title. Look past the wrongs of the past or something.
It's almost as if you're saying that the good of the many outweighs the whatever the hell the one thinks.
Yeah. I'll have to remember that one. I don't know. My Nimoy keeps sounding more like my Takei. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah. Nimoy, is that the guy that was the son of Ukrainian Jews?
Yes, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, moving right along here. We've got a lot of other
Moving right along. Okay.
we've got a lot of other great examples here. So let's jump into Voyager a little
Well,
bit.
and people may have had some more. We'll have some come up,
Yep.
but we should just say that DS9 is chock full of, like it is with everything else, is chock full of these kind of examples and cases. So
DS9's the problem with DS9 is
it's too rich.
It has too much of everything. Every episode of Live Support Live could exist just focusing on DS9. But if we move forward to Voyager, there's actually two situations.
There are actually several cases in Voyager, which is like, oh,
yeah.
For once, Voyager has more than I have to scrape up for. So.
Voyager has a lot. The first one was one, Larry, the first time I saw it, it was a little surprising to me. But this actually comes from Basics. What was his name again, Larry?
Lon Suter.
Yeah,
he was actually
Suter.
in Hell. And then Suter, he was the psychopathically. You throw your finesse psychological buzzword at me, but he basically was a serial killer. He loved killing for the thrill of killing, and he found a home in the Maquis rather than being in prison. He was Beta Z?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of it in a long time.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while.
Yeah. He has dark eyes, so he had black pupil contact lenses, so I think he's been. But no, he was like locked away for the duration of the voyage because he was found guilty of murder, but he was on a path, and Tuvok was offering him some, Vulcan therapy to try to deal with this, and he winds up being a hero when they're occupied and taken over by the Kazon, and winds up, he doesn't mean to be a martyr, but he winds up martyring himself at the end. Of all the redemption arcs, his was the most obvious. But
well, doesn't he? So you might say, like, well, this is a very strange example to bring up, because was he atoning? Was he making amends in some way? Was he doing any of those things that Q was asking Picard to do?
Picard.
Yeah. Well, Q asked Janeway. Q asked Janeway for help too. Well, I don't know if Q was asking Picard for help. I don't know what Q was doing. It's season 2. We'll find out.
Well,
Stay tuned, folks.
Picard, as Picard pointed out, there's something a little off about Q.
Yeah. There's not as much flash in the Q flash. I think there's
the Q flashes aren't as flashy.
No, something's going on here. It does seem like in Basics Part 1 and Part 2 that...
Well, that's because audiences in 2022, they won't accept a big flashy Q flash. That's so 1987. Audiences are so much more visually sophisticated now. So
I want the biggest Q flash possible. The bigger
that's
the
a Q flash that's like 25% off from the old Q flash.
Maybe he's cognizant that Picard's vision is not quite what it used to be, and so he has dimmed it as he has also altered his appearance. That's my headcanon. So I'm thinking about this, and it's been a long time since I've seen Basics, but I do remember Suter is more reflective of what he's done in sort of Part 1 of Basics, and in Part 2, he seems to realize that one way I can do something that is
Hmm.
a bit of atonement, is to sacrifice myself for this crew, is to
Or at
do
least the risk. I don't think
the
he wants
risk
to
of it.
throw his life
No.
away, but he's like willing to risk. But remember, it's about killing. He's done all this therapy to suppress his penchant for enjoying the thrill of murder.
Yeah.
And now, it's now he's being asked to go do that very thing. So it's like almost and the crew's gone. He's there. He's like their lifeline. It's Paris coming to rescue with some Talaxian pilots, I think. But he's on board and he's like the pivot to them retaking the ship.
Yes.
And there's going to be some fisticuffs or worse to do that. So
Sophisticates.
he's got to get himself over the hump of ripping up his own therapy
Yeah.
on top of anything psychologically, poignant about who he's going to help and atone for.
Yeah.
So he's making a big risk to do this, as well as just, gosh, I think I can get back in everybody's good graces if I do this.
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
It's really something that it seems like he's doing for himself, um, for his own peace.
Rebalance his, yeah.
Yeah. Is he getting support from Tuvok? Is that what was happening?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's all coming back now, Larry. It's all in there. Here it exists. Star
I
Trek
know,
is
I know.
real.
I know it's Voyager. You're amazed. Yeah, okay. It was the Michael Piller era of Voyager, and things almost made sense. Okay.
So we've got a lot of examples now, Larry, from New Track.
Yeah.
This is usually not the direction. And then I've been bookmarking all the examples. We've got so many examples from
Well,
our
I
wonderful
said
community.
DS9 has tons of examples of this, and Discovery says hold my beer. So
You want to talk about relationships needing repair? Have you seen any season of Star Trek
I
Discovery?
know you don't like the term, but it's like Voyage. It's like Discovery, the ship of the broken people. Okay.
Yes.
How
And
is the ship so intact when the people are so
and
broken?
have you
Okay.
seen that ship lately? The nacelles somehow magically hang on. I think they're broken. I think they need a little something to fix that up there, Larry. Okay, so the very first example you brought up here, Larry, as you started talking about Voyager or Discovery, was Culber and Tyler.
Mm.
Both of these characters they actually go through a lot. They both have these near or full death experiences. They both have been, in their own way, they've got a lot to deal with in their
Of
together.
issues?
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot in the together in every permutation with these characters.
Mhm.
There's a lot of repairing relationships that needs to happen. Um, I think the one that has been done that there's just more to talk about is Culber. Um,
Right.
is our good
Well,
doctor
he had a
here?
better contract. He stayed. Yeah.
I thought Tyler was supposed to go to Section 31. I thought that was the deal there. Bad bet. Bad bet to make.
What? No, it's like it's hanging out there. It's like everything else. It's somewhere out there in the
Well,
ether space.
isn't that the right way to launch a Section 31 show? Is totally make it mysterious and unknown when this thing is actually going to appear? Isn't that the most Section
Mhm.
31 thing to do? But if we are,
You never know when Section 31 will come calling.
no, I mean, the series premiere could be next week for all we know. Who knows? So, Culber, as a character, so he dies and is brought back, and I guess our definitions of death need to be reevaluated there. But
I
he,
see it literally.
yeah, his relationship with Stamets needs to go through a whole journey. Culber's relationship with himself, his relationship with the crew. We see now
Well, that's continuing. I
yeah,
mean, that's still up. Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say. In season 4, I think we are seeing him really start to come into his own of what is his relationship on the crew, and he's struggling with that, Larry. Like he likes being in this role of the ship's counselor, and he's also weighed down by a lot of that responsibility and the emotional impact of it, which I love because that's what it's like for a lot of people who are the ship's one mental health expert and also somehow need to be friends with all those people because you're on a ship and that's all you got.
Right. Right.
Um,
Well, and you all jumped 900 years in the future, and you left a past where you had some big once a year you had the big end of the universe as we know it crisis to face, and you get away from that, and suddenly you're plunked back into another place where you are still doing end of the universe crises as we know it every year. It
yeah,
can't even be the same crisis twice. No, it's going to be a different one.
it is. There's.
That would be stressful.
Can I go on a little tangent here for a moment,
Yeah,
Larry?
yeah,
Um,
sure, because the dots can't do it all.
what it is, there's two things that are a little weird for me. One is we're seeing two universe ending events playing out at the same time, which is just a little weird. The last time we had two Star Trek shows airing at the same time, it was Voyager and DS9. But I could sort of handle like, okay, Voyager's way out here, DS9's here, and these things are all happening at the same time. It's a little weird in my head to understand like, okay, well the galaxy's at risk, DMA, we got that here in this timeline. And here in this timeline, oh, okay, everything's changed. Does that mean this has changed? Well, I don't know. I guess time is all, it's all relative. I don't know.
Just focus on each thing. You got 900-year gap, but see the Picard situation. It's important for them. To me, and they go through this in this episode, and he says, "Okay, it's an alternate future, it's an alternate timeline, it's an alternate universe." And they're like, "No, it's a time thing that Q did." And when we find out that it's like an Edith Keeler dying, it's like a Picard didn't stab the Nausicaan moment, and you get It's a Wonderful Career. So notice how I didn't say that. Did you notice how I didn't say the word tapestry?
Every time a combat rings, a Ferengi gets a lobe. I don't know. So,
A Ferengi gets a lobe.
Okay. I couldn't think of something.
Yeah. No, I was going to be very proud of how I didn't mention the word tapestry, but I did. No, I mean, but I just think of everything happening in Picard as artificial. Like the real universe is bumping along somewhere. Maybe this is something somebody's going to get into because they have I was remembering the third time I was watching it to find that one moment when he says atonement. They have a whole discussion about how no, this is not an alternate universe. This is just a time. He kicked.
It's their own timeline that has been
and the timeline
changed.
Skewed, and we just have to fix that one thing, and the timeline will reset.
Yeah.
I do
love how he's like, how can we do this? Well, I have seen the Voyage Home. We could do what Kirk did. I do like that moment. But
the other thing that's obvious is when Picard is groping around for an answer of what's going on, and Q says, "Oh, how very yesterday's Enterprise of you."
Yeah, I do like that. Was a great line. I like.
Yes, true. It's like we're all some astronauts on some kind of
Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay. Relationships.
Getting back to relationships here. I think the cooler example for us to dive into.
This is the biggest discussion about Star Trek that's not supposed to be a discussion about Star Trek on the internet. I'm just going to say.
Yes. And I'm here for it. I think the better example, Larry, is the one that is, we joked about it takes Vulcans a long time to resolve their conflicts. Well, folks, it takes hundreds and hundreds of years, apparently, because Unification Part 3 showed us Navarre.
That's like off-skewed. That's huge.
It's pretty big. Yeah. But,
because I'm just saying there's a third Vulcan.
There we go.
There we go.
There's that person. Okay. So in Unification Part 3, we really learn about how Navarre came together and how the Romulan people did reunify with the Vulcans. Now, Larry, I think there's a lot to unpack here with this episode. When we're talking about this like larger I don't even want to call them nations. And they're not completely species. The,
Species factions, long separated, estranged species
well,
faction.
the Klingon Empire and the Federation coming to
Oh, I thought you were
terms.
about the Romulans and Vulcans. Okay.
I'm getting to them.
Okay.
The Klingons and the Federation, and then later we talk about Cardassians and Bajorans. And by extension, we see on Discovery that now that there is a president that has some Cardassian ancestry, we know that the Cardassians and the Federation, or the humans, and in some degree, there was some thawing of that relationship as well. And now we're looking at the relationship here between this big conflict that has been there for forever in Star Trek, the Romulans and the Vulcans here. They reunified. And if we look at those other large faction, species, territory, whatever, empire, federation, confederation, whatever the heck has unified, we can guess that part of it was because of diplomacy and was because of all of the things Spock Prime was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta imagine part of it is also the result of these larger forces. Romulus was destroyed. The Romulan Empire was in some state of long decline. Meanwhile, the diplomatic efforts are still ongoing.
It's a catastrophic moment, not unlike Praxis exploding on the Klingon.
Yes.
It's even more. I'll see your moon blow up, and I'll raise you your home planet. Yeah. Yeah.
I just have to. I just saw this comment. Zahir was saying the Kirathi have overrun the Confederation. Man, I love the Wing Commander video game series. Good pull there, Zahir. Did you ever play those games, Larry? Wing Commander.
The what?
Wing
what
Commander.
Is that?
So it was a space combat flight simulator, and the third version of the game had Mark Hamill star. It was an interactive movie, which meant you had to upgrade your computer to even be able to play it. But they had Mark Hamill play in it. And who plays Biff in Back to the Future?
That guy.
That guy. Yeah. He's in it as well. But anyways, the organization there is called the Confederation. So Zahir is pulling that out. Thank you for that good dip of nostalgia. But Larry, what do you think it was that finally brought these people back together and formed Navarre?
Well, it's the cataclysm of Romulus and all the. You see a little bit of that in Picard, where there's the Empire, the Romulan Free State. Star Trek Online talks about, and I think the novels picked it up, about factions. Like there was a faction that wanted to keep a Predator Empire type going. There's a faction that wanted to strike out without the old, all the old garbage baggage of the old days, and have more of a the Romulan Free Republic is what it is now. But anyway, there were factions, and apparently we're nomadic people. We're a fraction of what we once were. It's like join or die. It's like we all need to, like, safety in numbers. And I think that just survival and reality is what pushed them together. So, all the good that Spock is down there doing, and then he gives his life, for the jellyfish and trying to save the planet, and then he winds up in the big Kelvin maelstrom. But that's
the big Kelvin maelstrom.
He wasn't even around to know what the good that he did, if it did any good, or if it just took the impetus of the planet blowing up, and then the after effect where you see all the refugees in Picard running around looking so sad and pathetic. The society is blown up and nothing like it is, so they're just nomads. It's like, look at there's a diaspora. That's the condition they're in. You look around, I think of, like, until oil came along as a unifying economic power, the Arabs all through the Middle East were just kind of scattered in a far cry from their former, glory when they were naming stars and had the library at Alexandria.
So it's They're
Wow, sorry, that was a long way to go by way of Barcelona.
it's a long road, Larry, to getting from here to Navarre. It's been a lot of conflict that is silently happening on the Romulan Senate floor. I mean, gosh, these people, not only do they take a long time, Larry, to reunify, but those Romulan politics are pretty complicated. I mean, these people really, they don't do anything quickly. The Romulans or the Vulcans, do they? They really
No,
take
it
their
takes
sweet
yeah.
time. Yeah, the
I'm
Romulans
amazed
are
that
like,
Aileron bomb went off
yeah,
as fast as it did in Nemesis.
the
Okay.
Romulans are like, you think we're gonna show up in any of your movies? Ha! We'll show up in the 10th one, and then maybe the 11th. We're gonna take our time.
And that's why they had the reputation of being the boring ones, but, which wasn't accurate at all. But anyway,
No, Deanna can
which I
attest
think
to
I've
that.
K3'd on that before, right? Please tell me I've K3'd on.
About the Romulans being the boring ones?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. Like, does that Romulan have a warbird?
Surely, and don't call me Shirley. So
That's my line.
Insurrection, Michael Piller coming back to write his first Star Trek in several years for a movie, wanted to have it be Insurrection was originally going to be a Heart of Darkness, and Picard has to go upriver. And the other but it was going to be all about Romulans. And Patrick Stewart in his he's got the clout now in his contract. He has notes, and he basically said, "Oh, to think about this. Remember how the Romulans were like an afterthought in the Dominion War, even?
Yes.
Like even when they the whole thing with Pale Moonlight and bringing the Romulans into the war, there would always be like one token Romulan character, and then it changed. They had one general, and then it became the senator, and then they changed the casting of the senator. At the table when they needed a Romulan, token Romulan. And there was one good Romulan show with the Tal Shiar with Bashir working for Section 31.
Yep.
The Latin
where
episode.
He takes the Voyager. I mean, the Bellerothon or something.
Yeah. So it's like even the last year, there was only like one real Romulan plot arc thread because there was this perception that, and partly it was because of the stupid shoulders, partly was because of just the dumb Vulcan wigs, but there was this perception that the Romulans were boring, and so in the middle of that is when Insurrection is being conceived, and that's what Michael wanted to do, and Patrick had a note that said, "No, the Romulans are boring." And the whole creation of the Sonar, I can't believe I'm doing a whole K3 here in the middle of the show.
Let's do it.
The Sonar.
Let's do it. It's a penultimate episode.
Bonus. This is your end of series bonus, kids. No, but I mean, so the Sonar and the Baku all were created, and half the damn movie was taken up trying to explain their backstory when you could have just jumped right in and everybody knew the Romulans. But no, that was the thing. So they spend half the movie trying to build these two species up and come up with this relationship and yada yada. And, we all know that Insurrection was problematical in its reaction. And it's like, and poor Michael, though, he does live, he dies in 2005, and they do Nemesis before he's passed. But it's Nemesis is they bring John Logan in. He's an Oscar winner from the outside and an outside director. And meanwhile, what's the main plot of Nemesis about? Romulans.
Oh, Wrath of Khan. I mean, yes, Romulans.
Yeah. But I mean, it's Romulans. They start off with that. And then what happens? Then everything blows up, and you've got another team going to do a movie in the wilderness, a Star Trek. What's his main villain? A Romulan. Yeah. And it was all happening long enough where I got to look at Michael and go, so they wouldn't let you use Romulans because they were boring, and the next two movies by completely different producers use Romulans as the and he's like, oh, you noticed that, did you?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
So today we're all sitting here going, ooh, Romulans. We're talking about Navarre and all of this, but there was a time when they didn't get the best of handling, the best of respect by any faction.
I'm thinking about that as a fan, and I always liked the Romulan episodes because they were so rare that you got to see. So it was so exciting, like a warbird is decloaking. They're up to something. You don't see them often, but when you do, you know they're up to
Those,
something.
that warbird didn't pop in to go sell Romulan Girl Scout cookies. No,
No.
it's up
Although
to something.
they probably make a good cookie. Um,
Yeah.
the, I
I'd want
enjoyed
to
them.
taste her first, though. But
Yeah.
okay.
I enjoyed them, but there weren't a lot of them. I think it is fair to say that during that time, the 80s and 90s of Star Trek, Klingons were by far the most beloved uh, characters. I mean, you any convention you go to, you throw
Alien
a
character.
tribble and you hit a Klingon. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
they're everywhere. But the Romulans had some good stuff here. So yeah, I think it's getting back to Navarre because we don't want to forget about the Kanar, and we already talked about
Oh
Damar.
no.
Though we haven't gotten to Quark's bar yet, and there's it's a bit
Are you trying
afar.
to say they have Kanar on Navarre?
They definitely have Kanara and Navarre. It's only logical. So if we get back to
That's
Navarre,
setting a low bar. I know.
it's
Okay.
we've already set that bar quite afar from where we have to keep the door ajar. Anyways, let's jump into a different series, one that is animated. Let's talk about Lower Decks, Larry.
Let's talk about Lower Decks.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about the new animated series. Now we actually have three of them. Okay, so if we talk
And
about this moment,
and you might be tempted to think about Freeman and Mariner, and why they have different last names and different even than the Admiral. That's her dad and her husband. But anyway, it's an interesting concept. But I just wanted to go to this, even though it's played for laughs. It's almost played for laughs about the same thing as the, ooh, he's a senior officer and he came back from the dead as a meme. But they're so pissed off at each other when Boimler leaves, he totally ghosts everybody. So they're kind of justifiably mad. This is
yes,
not near as
yes,
galaxy spanning as the Vulcans and Romulan
no,
schism,
but it's personal.
but it's personal, and
Yeah.
it's funny the way he comes back. They're thrilled to see him. It's so sitcom-y though, but it mimics real life. They're thrilled to see him. In that one, Manwaring gets up and gets out of the table. They go and they hug him, and then she throws him down because she's mad because of the way he treated her. They're
Yeah.
glad to see him, but it's like, you don't get off the hook that easily. I have to vent on you before I let you back in my circle, which quickly happens. So
Larry, what are they eating here? Is that a cheese log? What?
no, that's the what do they call it? Festival corn, community corn, and they're
Okay.
kidding about having the corn as a missing pip and all of that.
Oh, right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Festival
That's right.
corn, what is it
That's right.
called? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is this is a probably a more relatable example. Where Boimler he did totally ghost them. He left without saying goodbye. He left their ship, the California class, for the Titan. He did all of these things that sort of go against not only their friendship, but the things that they supposedly cared about, being a lower decker, being on a second contact ship, all of that sort of stuff. And now Larry, he's wearing that gray uniform. He's not even,
Hmm.
in the cool post TNG uniform. By the way, another aside, because that's what we're doing on this penultimate episode, apparently. I'm loving the new uniforms on Picard. I also love the uniform season 4 of Discovery. I always thought the earlier uniforms on Discovery and season 1 uniforms on Picard were over designed. There was just too much going on. And on the new Picard ones, I love how they are a bit more of an integration between TNG era as well as motion picture era. It looks great, and the Discovery ones do look like much more futuristic material.
I Yeah, and I hear what you're saying about the flashback Picard, the 2287 ones. The time of the burn, not the time of the burn, the time of the Romulan supernova.
Yeah,
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 yeah, and the synth attack on Mars. The flashback, which is 2287, I think,
Yeah.
or 2387. Anyway, those did look a little uncomfortable, like they weren't quite into their own skin. But
Yeah.
please don't compare them to the Abomination. I mean, I don't know in what universe of whatever century of whatever timeline those poor starting out uniforms for Discovery just look like they're the most uncomfortable. They look, but they're so over the top and impractical. It's like,
Yes.
why?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like somebody at Starfleet got a good deal on a goofy Delta metallic fabric imprinting machine, and they're like, "Oh no, we paid for this, damn it! We're gonna have everybody wear this crap, no matter what you think about it." It's like this is like, what does it fit? And
Yes.
navy blue, just
Yeah.
okay. Anyway,
Yeah. They've finally figured that out, and I love those uniforms. They look gorgeous. Even Q, my goodness, Q's always got a great sense of fashion here. But
he wasn't wearing a uniform. He's just
no,
in
I know he's
black.
not wearing a uniform, but he looks great. Whatever he's wearing, he looks very Q, elder Q. He looks very elder Q, and he looks.
Well, that's good casting since he is an elder Q.
He is an elder Q. Oh my goodness!
We need a Robbie Duncan McNeil type. Let's just get Robert Duncan McNeil. Okay, we need an elder Q type. Well, let's just get elder Q. Okay. Okay.
Oh man. Okay, we've got one more example before we get to the community's examples.
He's running around in black constantly. See, again, you can sure tell the New York centricity of Star Trek.
That's
Everybody's
true.
running around in their little black. Okay.
That's true.
It's
always a good choice. It's as I agree to. So one more example we have here comes from our newest series, before Strange New Worlds comes out, and that is Prodigy. Yeah, a good example, Larry. So what's going on here, Larry?
They're talking. No, so well, you start off with a very obvious conflict of and Cadet Alice, by the way, is going to be back with a video as soon as I can get my stuff together, and we talk about this some. But her dad is the mean guy, the diviner, that's enslaved all these kids.
Yeah.
And she starts off as an agent working for him, not questioning her father, and then winds up estranged with them. And that dynamic of trying to get back, trying to see him in a positive light leads her astray because he keeps betraying her, he keeps disappointing her. And they play with that a few times, but it's also a matter of the other kids, the teenagers, the rest of the gang, the crew. They don't trust her because they keep her tied up for the first 2 or 3 shows, and she's in the brig.
Yep.
And it's a very life and death kind of, it's obviously black and white situation here. You're an agent of your father and he's out to get us. So, but she has to realize that about her father, and at the same time get a relationship with them, and they get to see her working not against them. And the final straw is when they try to leave the murder planet. I think it takes 3 or 4 episodes, but it finally happens. And even when they're kind of working together, there are moments when they still don't have a moment of trust. But toward the end of this first 10 episode arc, they definitely have to pitch together. They have to pull together. And then at one point, it's not so much Dal accepting or her accepting Dal. It's mainly them accepting her. She's ready to. She knows in her heart what's happened, but they have to trust her that she's really with them now, and she's really turned against, or she sees the reality of her father's situation, and that's sad. But he's down on himself there, so she's able to reach out to him in that moment. He's finally seeing the limitations of his. He's not the uber genius, captain of a, he's not the prodigy captain that he thought he was, and she's reaching out to him. But it's their relationship of trust and distrust that's finally starting to heal there, as they all have a common goal.
Agreed. Well said, Larry.
You're looking at the chat as I've been trying to do, and I'm so far behind on the chat again. That's the one skill I'm never going to pick up in this exercise is keeping on top of the chat in a good way. But you're welcome, Prodigy. Yay, I did it. Yes.
Yes. Well done, Larry. Well done.
The new kids got some due here.
Well, there's a lot of repairing relationships, especially when later on in the series or in that season, um, they sort of strand the crew a little bit. There's a lot of that stuff, and the whole first season seems to be this theme of like how these people can come together, and in that process, there's a lot of micro repairing of their relationships that they have to do, as well as establishing. I think you said it really well here, Larry. There's so many examples our lovely community has brought up. Let's dive into some of these.
We didn't. Did we do Voyager?
We did Voyager. Oh, we can. Oh, we skipped one
Oh,
Voyager.
Suitor. I had one that was
Oh,
very
yeah,
on the
yeah, yeah.
nose.
Let's talk about that one. Let's talk about that
I
one.
don't usually try to do, but this was one that hit me before Suitor did. Suitor was a great dive, which I liked. It was Suitor versus everybody. Suitor in reality. But this was one that was on the nose, and it was baked in the cake of the show, and they finally dispensed with it in the second season, that it was Paris and Neelix having this rivalry, and it kind of spurred. This seems so insane now in the early years, but it was a jealousy or a perceived jealousy over Kess.
Yes.
And it was undermining what was going on between Neelix and Tom, and they finally buried it when they got to birth the alien bird baby in parturition, early second season.
Yeah, and they did that by actually talking about it, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. They're in the cave. They've got again. It's like a crisis brings you together,
Yeah.
and they're having to deal with this bird baby so that the parent race and the parent species don't take it out on Voyager.
Yeah.
And they deliver it back, and they do all the things, and they repair the potential damage and get the hell out of there. But in the process, they bond and work together, and it might be a little trite and it might be a little on the nose, but it happens. So there.
Yeah.
It's second season Voyager. What can I say? They're trying.
Yeah. I think that's a good one in terms of repairing relationships, because that was unlike the Maquis Federation conflict, this is one you see happening in episode after episode after episode, that their conflict between Neelix and Paris. It is one that persists, and one that does reach a boiling point there when they're trapped together and they're forced to sort of confront it, because they have to. They're kind of stuck together. That's a good one. Speaking of Voyager, one that Linda mentioned earlier in our chat is Tuvok and Neelix. Now, I would say they kind of have a annoyance between each other.
Yeah, and it's not Spock McCoy and it's not Odo Quark. It is just what it is. It's like one of them cares and the other one doesn't.
Yeah. Tuvok's like,
it's one of those. No, it's one where one is just annoyed, and they could care less. It's just a fact, and the other one kind of cares. And the other one was like, okay, really, I don't even want to put the time into worrying about this.
Yeah,
I have other things to do. But which is a dynamic that happens.
Yeah, speaking of Neelix, Charlotte says Neelix was so much more likable once Kess was out of the picture. His jealousy was so toxic, which I agree. It was, especially in a modern lens, it doesn't look too well. He was very possessive.
Toxic and badly written.
Yeah. And then Charlotte also says Neelix is like the needy puppy that followed Tuvok home. I agree that Neelix as a character does continue to evolve.
Don't ever give those needy puppies water. They'll never forget you.
I don't give a what. Ooh, shower. This is great. What are you,
the
Federation
most basic molecule
people?
in the galaxy we can replicate water.
Yeah.
Oh, we shouldn't even go there. We shouldn't even go there.
No, let's not. Dave said Worf and Alexander. I love this example, Larry. I love this example. I always love a good TNG.
But they're related. It doesn't count.
Oh, it counts. I am a big fan
We've done
of
family therapy already, haven't we? It doesn't count. No, I'm kidding.
One of my favorite things is when TNG introduces a conflict and then doesn't touch it, and then DS9 comes in and says, "Oh, we're gonna explore this across a multi-episode, multi-season arc." It's one of my favorite things. Oh, you want Maquis? We're gonna give you Maquis. But Worf and Alexander is a great one. When last we seen Alexander in TNG, he doesn't want to be a Klingon and doesn't really like his dad very much. And when we see him pick up in DS9, he's trying to be a Klingon and really failing at it. And Worf is quite at first disappointed, and sort of finds a way to be a dad and a supportive figure in his life again. What do you think's going on here, Larry? What brought these two finally back into the fold with each other?
26 episodes a year on DS9.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Yeah.
We need something. No, I thought it was a really good choice. It's a whole topic, and it's a topic that resonates with the audience, so it's worth exploring. And there's lots of reality moments left on the table across all of Star Trek that were out there. But it's Klingons and it's Michael Dorn, and they have to do the caveat of kids grow up. Those hybrid species offspring grow up so fast. 2 years ago he was 8. Now he's 15. That's as good as he was born yesterday. He's 6 today. But no, I mean, it was fodder, and it was something else to do with Worf. I mean, I'm looking at it from all the practical production aspects, not from, oh, look, they're two individuals of a species. But no, and they got 2 or 3 shows out of it, I think. And Alexander was even around for the wedding, which was interesting. Yeah. That they thought to bring him in for that. It's like, why don't they have, it's like people have family and something major happens, like a funeral or a wedding or something. And it's like, why didn't they bring in his or her mom and dad and little brother, Yeah. Oh, because we just couldn't afford it in the guest budget this week. But that was I like to see that. And but the idea that first Alexander is the rebellious kid, which was a lot like the actor who's since passed away, who'd gotten his life together and then died. But he's this bratty kid in the beginning and a little whiny. But then the next time you see him, he's like the anti-Klingon. He's like what, 1/4 human, so he's tainted with bad blood. But he's like the not whiny. He's like the skinny Klingon kid that'll never play football.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like.
And he's trying to find his own way that way, and I think they got a lot of, for 2 or 3 episodes worth, and for a show that is horrible about keeping up with, even when it's a ship of families,
keeping up with the Cardassians.
It's a ship that's horrible about keeping up with the family relationships and all that for the most part. Yeah.
I really do like Alexander's story because, so yeah, he's a 1/4 human, but he also. He lost his mother, and so that's something that both he and Worf share.
Right, his face.
Yeah, yeah. So both he and Worf have lost parents, and he grows up with a father who doesn't quite know how to be a dad, and also doesn't quite know how to raise a Klingon son. And
and then is absent.
And then is absent, and has him raised by his human parents. So there's a lot there that I think is really interesting for Alexander, and for anyone who's grown up in a bicultural environment or has immigrated or has asked themselves questions of identity. I think Alexander is a cool story, a cool parallel there, and to see some resolution there between him and Worf is so great to see, because it is sort of the it is this this big thing from his past that is not the most comfortable thing for him to explore, and is largely ignored for a long time on DS9, and then there it is, and we get some resolution there. It's wonderful to see that.
Isn't it Lower Decks that, of course it is, I think, that talks about, is it the Klingon acid rock band or the Klingon goth rock band or something?
I mean, only Lower Decks would say that.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, when you have a situation like Alexander's growing up years, I can totally see the genesis of a Klingon acid goth rock band. Yeah. If you had 5 Alexanders, I could totally see that happening. Yeah.
Well, speaking of these
scowling
folks,
around.
as here says, Alexander Rozhenko. His name is Alexander Rozhenko, and he'll never be a warrior. Just a boy. He's just a boy.
He's just a boy. Yeah.
Just a boy who's quarter human. Speaking of these folks, Scott mentions Riker and Troy. The connection there: Worf, Troy, Riker, Worf, Riker, Troy. Let's talk about that. So this is, the motion picture relationship across 7 seasons and 4 movies here. We see their relationship go up and down, and this is a great one, Scott.
And now an animated.
And now yeah.
Picard.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And in Picard. Yeah. Wow. They've spanned a long time. So TNG, the movie series, Lower Decks, Picard. 4 series or 4 kind of iterations.
You saw them separately. You saw Troy after she's married. Right? They get married in Nemesis. No. When she's counseling Barclay, they're not married yet because that's late Voyager. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Okay. But it's So we see Troy and Voyager. So 5. Like their relationship kind of spans these 5. Wow, it's a lot of stuff, Larry.
I mean, well, and then Riker is watching his little holodeck program at the end of Enterprise, although we shouldn't talk about it.
Oh my gosh!
Oh, we didn't. I didn't mention we didn't do Enterprise yet, and I meant to pull an image from the one you had a good idea for. Not to. I'm sorry. I'm derailing your talk about Troy and Riker.
Oh, to Paul. To Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say you're to Paul and her family, your mother and family.
That's another good one here. But yeah, no, Scott. I think Scott brought up Troy and Riker here, and this is a relationship that's seen a lot of ups and downs. But it does really rekindle. I mean, they form a friendship. They form a working relationship. They become very collegial and friendly towards the end of TNG. But it's really in Insurrection, and how much of that is because of the Briar Patch. How much of that is just because of circumstances? I don't know, but it does lead them to reconsider and reconnect and just see. Maybe they're feeling a little bit more like their younger selves, and it's rekindled some of those old feelings. But maybe they started dating after
those old feelings. Okay,
those temporal feelings. They they reevaluate things a little bit with Insurrection. I think they probably start dating, but they work stuff out as we get to Nemesis, and then as we see in Picard, they start and keep a family together.
Well, they were always close. They fall into that where Starfleet officers, we shouldn't get close together because we might have to commission ourselves into a life and death mission, whatever. But in the loss, it's not just Haven. It's in the loss when she loses her. That last scene when she kisses him at the end of the loss was always. I was like, whoa! You could know the plot of the show, but that moment and the 2 actors. Here's another mini K3. The 2 of them never wanted to let it go, and they would find in the most innocuous of moments. They're on the bridge in the middle of a crisis, and they would do meaningful looks at each other as a reaction shot. Or they would even kind of quasi move their hands closer together at a table or something. And but they always kept the chemistry, the spark there, even when the scene had nothing to do with, and they didn't take away from the moment, but they would just find a way. You know how you look at two people and you go, you guys are a couple, you're intimate, how well you're feeding, you're giving each other the crap off your plate, or, those kinds of things. They would find as actors ways to do that with their characters, even when it didn't detract from the moment, but it was there. And so it was never too far away when they did want to go there. And they were always cheerleading for that to happen.
Yep.
Even as Riker was being, Junior Kirk, and Troy had her moments. But anyway, they just wanted to keep that in the subtext, keeping it going. And it finally went out. They never went away. Yeah. Even in the stupid year of Troy and Worf.
Yeah, that was. Yeah. Zahir brought up an interesting relationship question here. As Sisko regained his respect for Picard, and he's kind of speaking about the conflict. Well, more than conflict.
Sisko blaming Picard for the loss of Jennifer, and and shitting up his own life. Yeah.
And all of Worf 359 and all of that.
Worf 359.
Worf, did I say Worf 359? Wolf.
Sounded like.
I love that line. Have we met? Yes, sir. We met in battle. Picard's like, well.
I know it's your new series and all, but come on, man.
Yeah. That's the greatest moment in episode 2 where he drinks the coffee and he's like, oh, this is the darkest timeline. We all saw that joke coming a mile away, but it was still satisfying. We have some more Enterprise examples. A lot more just beamed in. Charlotte said Malcolm and Trip in Shuttlepod 1. Also a great new podcast as well.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's another one where they're trapped together. They think they're dying. Might as well work out our stuff.
No, they're just hosting a podcast. What do you mean? Oh, you mean the episode. Oh,
I mean the episode. Yeah. And
yeah, they think they're dying and the truth comes out. Yeah, they're brutally honest because why not? Yeah.
Justin says Malcolm and Archer. This also sounds like Dharmic and Tanar. Malcolm and Archer, when his ties to Section 31 is found out. Yes, that's a one that kind of takes a little, feels like it takes a while.
Well, O'Brien and Bashir, when his genetic engineering is found out.
Yes. Mayweather and his brother. That's another good one over here.
Look at all these people who have even watched No, I'm kidding.
Charlotte says Michael Burnham and Saru were at odds at the start of Discovery, and now they're besties. Yeah. This is a really good one. They have we see in season 1 that after Michael does the Vulcan hello, her relationship with Saru is really sort of destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's worried about his threat ganglia going to choke him. It's so bad. Yeah.
No, it's more like this.
Yeah.
It's more like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't seen those threat ganglia. Well, I guess we saw them recently, actually.
He shed them. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
Vaharail.
Yeah.
Whatever.
So the next 3 seasons, we see their relationship rebuild. Michael regains Saru's trust and understanding, and also forgiveness there.
Yeah, and even as they swap places in the chair, it's to the point where they both lean on each other. This episode this week.
Yes.
We didn't talk about it, but they totally lean on each other. Yeah.
And I think Michael does a lot of self-discovery. There you go. Linda says, and then there's Worf and Riker's repair of their relationship in All Good Things.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. So in that future 10 forward.
Future fake, but sure, yeah.
Yeah. But, we got those comm badges that are kind of
and the
sort
flap.
of canon now.
The flap.
The flap, too. Yeah. So we see those future versions of themselves, which I guess are now, like where Picard is in the timeline. I guess that's where we're at. Is we're kind of where we were in All Good Things. I don't know. Um, but
That
War,
was like 20. Yeah, I guess so.
right?
Ish.
Yeah.
I've got to remember. It's very much spelled out in All Good Things. It was
Everyone
like
looks
20 something years.
everyone looks better than the fake future version of themselves in All Good
The
Things.
bad future makeup of the early 90s on TV budget. Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan Frakes looks so great, but in All Good Things he looks like really like not so great. Anyways,
hmm
we see Riker talk to Worf and sort of apologize and own up to his role in the conflict that happened between the two of them after Deanna died in that timeline. So that's a great example. And speaking of owning up, Picard called Worf a coward. If you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand.
You stand. I
Um,
would kill you where you stand. Yes.
and he then apologizes. He's like, "Wow, okay, that was bad.
hmm
I did insult him in the worst way you possibly can."
Someone in the turnabout on that, someone mentioned when Data's in command in was it Redemption Part 2, where
Yes.
Worf is making fun of he's like his office, his commands, and Data pulls him in the ready room, and Worf is kind of like, oh, it takes a moment to go. We need to adjust. There you go.
Yep.
We need to adjust our relationship so we can function out there on the bridge because it's not just you and me, Bucko. It's everybody else in the crew, and I need to be respected. And he's like, well, it's just you and me. And then he has to point that out, and then rational Worf quickly jumps back into. But I love when they say, I would hope that this instant has not repaired, has not destroyed our personal relationship.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Data's like, well, if it doesn't continue, it doesn't need to.
Yeah.
And then Data says something. I mean, I just watched this the other day, and Data says something about it. And I regret anything that this, any hiccup in our relationship this may cause too. He doesn't say that, but they both kind of apologize. Once they set their barrier, they set their boundary.
Yeah.
Then they both hope that setting the boundary doesn't alter their basic relationship, and they're both able to say no because they're perfect 24th century humans, except one's a Klingon, one's an android.
Yeah.
They're
Neither
able to
are you.
say. They're able to do the textbook therapeutic thing to say, and then they go off because they're
Yeah.
24th
So
century adjusted people.
a couple of things about that. One is I do love how
I was not making fun of your profession at all.
No,
Ali.
no. I love how aspirational TNG is. Because that moment, like every moment in TNG, every discussion among the crew in TNG is aspirational. It's like, this is what we should aspire, how we should aspire to act with each other.
Just in daily communication, right? And
Yeah,
activity.
yeah. It's they make it very clear what is the conflict, how do we deal with this, and how can we continue working together in a productive way. Okay, check. Let's go back to the bridge and get things done. That's one. I love that about TNG. And then number two, this is a very dangerous thing, Larry. When you drop these little examples, I tend to want to watch that episode. Just a few weeks ago, you mentioned how Janet refers to Parallels as like the episode with like 1,000 wharfs or something, all the wharfs.
She used to call it multiple wharfs.
Multiple wharfs.
Yeah.
I kept thinking about that. You incepted me, and then like 3 days later, I had to watch the episode, and I did. I watched it. I'm like, this is such an enjoyable episode. There's a great moment where he talks to Deanna, and he says, will you be Alexander's Mokbar? And then she's like, what is that? It's like, well, it's kind of like being my sister. And then then Deanna goes, I guess I would make my mother your mother-in-law or something. And then he goes, I hadn't considered that. It is a risk I'm willing to take. But the acting, Michael Dorn's acting through the layers of makeup is just Emmy. It should have been nominated for an Emmy, that moment. It's such a great Such a great moment
Well, a
there.
lot of things should have been done, yeah, back then that weren't done. Yeah.
Yeah, but speaking of data,
You were
Nathaniel.
going through those phases, and I was thinking anytime Worf was talking about Spot, it's the same
Oh
thing.
yeah, yeah, yes. Michael Dorn is such a gem. Nathaniel said Data spends his lifetime trying to reconcile with his family, his father, his brother, all of that. Absolutely, that's a great. It's a great example right over there. So
Hey, here's
many.
one.
Yeah.
Back at 1026, Jarrod said, I think it was Jarrod, said, you talk about atonement or repairing relationships, but fandom and Kurtzman Trek.
Oh.
You're talking about conceptual, cultural things.
Yeah. I mean, I would. I would even go. I would step back and say like a lot of Berman Trek too. Um,
Oh no, that was always perfect and pristine. What are you talking about, Ali? You
I
apparently are over 25 and know of what you speak.
I mean, I think Enterprise is a good example of that. Is as more history has come out about the context in which Enterprise was being created, with the pressures on UPN and the studio execs and all the conflicting demands, I think it makes a lot of sense. And the more you learn about how TV is created and how complicated and collaborative and not collaborative that process that is, I apply the same stuff to the Kelvin timeline and the more recent Star Treks and Discovery season one. Um, People are trying to do their best to tell compelling stories, and and Generations, another example. It's not a perfect enterprise, Larry. It,
No,
no.
no, it's not.
Yeah.
But the point there about being that the longer the new generation of Trek goes on, fandom, say fandom, there's factions and there's eddies and currents and all that. But the big, it's like a big cattle drive.
Yeah.
And there's the cows that are just in the middle, and there's the one on the edge that go off on tangents, and you have to go rope them back in if you even care. Or sometimes they're lost forever. But the main thrust of the cattle in the middle of where did this metaphor come from? I don't know. But it's like the main.
Oklahoma? I'm guessing
I
Oklahoma.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm doing a little good night loving here, I guess. There's a trail, the good night loving trail. Anyway, good night hyphen love. Two ranchers' last names, but I always loved talking about the good night loving trail. Um, it's more romantic than the Chisholm Trail. Anyway, the thing of the main unwieldy body of fandom, which doesn't exist, but we kind of talk about it that way, has been kind of quasi in love with Picard and feeling better about Discovery as of late. And that's when he mentioned fandom and Kurtzman Trek or Secret Hideout Trek, whatever, that it kind of struck me that way. That and then the animateds are getting raves. Lower Decks and Prodigy are both pretty much warmly received. So, and people are all on the edge of their seats waiting on Strange New Worlds. So
Yeah.
that's been a long road getting from there to here.
It
The last
has.
5.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that teaser of Strange New Worlds. I'm very excited for that. A few more comments, Larry, and then I think we need to jump forward here. As is always the case, there are so many great examples. Let me do these at lightning round.
Thank you, lifers. Yeah, everybody's great.
I'm gonna share these comments,
And
Larry,
I'm
and
waiting.
then let's do quick lightning response. Um, okay. Charlotte said, "Been watching a lot of TNG lately, and it's just now hitting me how freaking privileged Picard is. He's always been used to getting his way, and it truly shocks him when he doesn't. See season 1 of Picard." Um, uh, and Nathaniel talked about this too. Larry and Ali, is there any opportunity to talk about what's inferred in this episode? Privilege, both pre and post Q. Picard enjoys a certain level of position of privilege that can be described as being inherited, both within. Let's save that for the hailing frequencies. This is not a lightning round question. This is needs a substantive response.
That's an interesting thing, though. And okay, there's a building. The very first, well, save it for late.
Save it.
Shut
Well,
up, Larry.
yeah.
Move it. Go.
Culber and Stamets needed a huge repair of their relationship. Yes.
Because they both individually had been blown up in different ways. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nathaniel also mentioned theme of reunification. We talked about that. Libby said Quark and Rom. in Family Business when they have the big physical fight. Oh, and how that makes me laugh.
And Quark and his mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Quark and Mook. Yeah.
I think what's cool about them is they're stuck together, they're siblings, they're family, and they work together, and then later they just live together on the station. They sort of have to keep working at it. Riker and Spot, says Zahir.
I see. Oh, Riker and Spot. That's interesting.
Yeah, sure.
Not Worf and Spot, but Riker and Spot.
Oh, another Voyager episode or example, Paris and his father, from across the galaxy, repairing their relationship.
Yeah, and what a lost moment. Another bad thing about another disappointing thing about the Voyager finale was they're standing right there. He's on the VistaVision screen in front of his son, and just about the time you think there's going to be a father-son moment, they hear the baby cry, and they go, "What's that?" And it's like, "Oh, it's your grandson." And it's like, okay, but could the father and the son have had just like one moment of rebonding there before he gets up to run off to see the baby? Anyway.
Yeah. Picard and his brother, absolutely, in Family, post Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
Before and after the mud bath.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mud fight.
I like how...
Well, in the same vein, has anyone said Tom and Will? Riker?
No.
The unintended brothers?
Yeah.
Clones?
That's a good example. Justin said, wish we could have seen the Zindian Federation repair their relationship over time in Enterprise. I think at some point, whether it's Discovery or Picard, we see the Zindi are mentioned somewhere, or some Zindi species as being a part of the Federation. I think it must have been Discovery. I think we see the Zindi somewhere there. So there has been some.
I'm trying to remember. I hate this. I hate that I don't know this right off. I just haven't seen them enough. I'm trying to think. It wasn't some kind of future-looking Enterprise, was it?
Oh, you think it's Enterprise J in Enterprise? There's Zindi on board?
I was thinking there was something in Enterprise where they have the moles handy, where they showed a Zindi in the future.
Yeah, it could be. A
Zindi human.
Maybe what's his name? The future... What was his name? The future guy? Not the future guy, but the other future guy.
Daniels, the temporal agent.
Yeah, it might have been Daniels. Yeah. Well, Larry, let's what we should do is jump forward here to I'm going to do a combined counselor's log and away mission here.
Oh, you've been doing a lot of that lately.
I have. Okay. Well, we've had so many examples here. This is a part of the show where I do a little bit deeper dive into some of the examples, some of them a little bit more psychology and how to apply this related to the examples that we've been talking about. Gosh, so many more. People keep bringing these really great examples here.
Conflict in drama. What a concept. Okay.
Yeah, Daniel just said, Ambo Jitsu, repairing relationships, breaking teeth. With Riker.
Oh, R.I.P. Mitchell Ryan that played Riker's dad.
Yeah. So let's talk about repairing relationships here. So. One of the things that we know about humans that really separates us from other animals is our ability to work with one another at a much larger scale than other animals. Most animals have a hard time collaborating beyond their bloodlines and beyond like 100 people, 100 other members of their species. But humans can collaborate with way beyond that, way beyond our families. And I think the greatest example of that is the space program. From the people who mine the raw ingredients to mission control to the astronauts, there's so much collaboration that has to go in order to make all this stuff possible. But what comes along with relationships is conflict and not only conflict, but messing up, doing things that really harm those relationships. So, and that's why we tend to get, I was going to say ugly, but that's when relationships can get ugly, and there's anger and hurt and sadness and all this sort of stuff. So the theory goes, I dive into some of the research here, but we're short on time, so I'll just cut to the chase. Forgiveness has probably evolved to help us repair relationships. And what forgiveness does is you're owning up to your responsibility in this problem, and you're sort of lowering yourself a little bit in status, by making amends, by asking for forgiveness, which has the effect of lowering the other person's anger as well. And you're the aggressor here. You caused some type of problem. You did something bad. And by asking for forgiveness, you're lowering your status as the aggressor, and you're showing the other person that, hey, our relationship still has value. It still means something to me. And what that does is it kind of helps other people to feel less hurt, and it helps them to feel like, hey, maybe this relationship is of value, and maybe there's something that I should do here. So then the question becomes like, how do you do this? How do you repair a relationship? And a lot of this, Larry, kind of depends on the culture that you're in. It depends on the context of the situation, how to ask for forgiveness, and what to do here. There's a lot of different things that people can do, and the first thing seems to be some type of honest apology where you are really acknowledging your role in this problem. And Larry, I would say like this is step one, right? But this is where most people mess up a lot. It's hard to honestly own up to your role in this problem. And I think look at most public figures and how they might offer an apology. The famous mistakes were made statement, is that honestly owing up to your role in this problem? Probably not. And I think all the examples that we've really talked about, especially Navarre, and I'm not trying to evoke any Canar because Lavar would not like that. But if we look at Navarre and the Romulans and the Vulcans, there's a lot of hurt feelings that have gone on for a long time. And I think Charlotte mentioned they live long. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And they also live longer, so they can hold a grudge longer, which is probably true of Spock and his dad as well. But when you're dealing with such complicated conflict, they really need to own up to what's happened, and it takes them a very long time to repair that and honestly own up to what's happened. And once you have that honest apology for what's happened, there has to be some type of compensation. There has to be some action that does culturally repair whatever problem has occurred. You have to rectify and fix the situation. In some cultures, that might mean an apology is good enough. In another culture, it might mean giving a gift to the other person or to the wrong parties. In some culture, it might mean giving up what you have taken, maybe giving back land, maybe restoring some type of restorative justice here. So it's usually these kind of two things, Larry, that need to happen. You have to acknowledge the mistake, you have to apologize, and you have to do something that repairs or rectifies the situation, whether it's a gift or giving back or things like that. So I think in all the examples we've talked about, we see some example of that actually occurring. So that's my counselor's long and away mission. Did I lose you, Larry? Are you frozen?
And
here?
you're standing by it. No, I was valiantly trying to read more in the chat, gang. So, no, you didn't lose me. I think you did lose me. Can you hear me?
I hear you. I don't see you.
I'm
So
really not falling asleep. I'm really here.
I'm gonna boot you out and then bring you back in, Larry. Oh no, you're back. You're back.
There
You're
we
back.
go.
You're
Okay.
back. Okay. Whatever you
That's
did, you
wild.
fixed it.
Yeah, you're over there. Okay.
Yeah, whatever you did,
I
you
didn't do a
fixed it.
thing. I started talking. I was listening to you and reading chat, trying to keep up.
So Larry, I think this is
Quick,
this is
just in time.
a good, yeah, I know, just in time. This is a great time for us to transition to a K3 factor. And this is the time in the show where we do a little deeper dive into some of the stories behind Star Trek.
Behind real world, behind the scenes Star
Yep.
Trek. So I'm going to keep this real simple. And this is sadly, this is a theme that I can think of a ton of examples. We can go back to the beginning and talk about Nimoy and Shatner when they let work, when Spock was so much more popular than anyone thought, and there was that rivalry, and then they finally came up with the most favored nation status, where whatever one of them got, the other got, and that lasted all through the movies, and they were mostly fine until sadly the end of Nimoy's days, when he didn't like something Shatner did in one of his documentaries, and they didn't speak really the last year or two, which was kind of sad. And it was the time when Nimoy wasn't on stage, so it didn't come up at conventions, rather. And then we've got the really sad story of the See, this is jealousy fueling a lot of this. The jealousy between Kate and Jerry on Voyager, Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan, and it was really out of Kate's side. I mean, Jerry just walked in.
I thought you were gonna say Shatner and Nimoy, but sorry, that's where my head was going when you spoke about jealousy. And
Oh, well, that's it. I mean, I was trying to
yeah,
say it started jealous. Yeah, Shatner jealous about being blindsided of the second banana in the show being as popular or more popular than the lead is. That's an uncomfortable situation, and they had to get through it, and it was uncomfortable for a lot of people around them for a while, but by the time of the movie era, they got that settled. And then Kate and Jerry's situation never was resolved. Really, to their credit as professionals, they got the show. You know, people watched the show and had no clue. And it was only later on. I mean, you did if you were around at the time. And then here in the years since, they've both had successes elsewhere, and time is on our side, and they've made up in public. And, you know, part of it was Garrett bringing it to the fore and telling the world about it, where everybody else was just, you know, hush hush about it. And you've got actors backstage. You're bound to have that kind of thing. But it also happens, you know, around the creatives. And so that's one thing that we haven't really had that kind of a situation come up. You had the turmoil on the Discovery staff, right? And some of that, I don't know, so much of that was about relationships and people having to get back to work together. But the one I want to really talk about that may be a little bit of surprise, and I think of it, is the picture I gave you. Do you have the image?
Yeah, here it comes.
It's a black and white,
Viewer
everybody.
ahead.
So try not to turn it off. So, do you know those folks? You
Well,
who
I
we
know
got the
Gene
picture?
Roddenberry, obviously.
And that's Bob Justman on the
Oh, yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So here's a couple of guys that worked side by side. They met because
And
of
Larry,
the
it looks
original
like Section 31 is meeting in the back there.
series. That's true. You recognize the silhouette.
Or future people are meeting in the back there.
Those are literally people profiling back there. Okay. Uh, no, so, I mean, Gene and Bob always got along, but Bob Justman was very hurt in the 60s parlance of, you know, we all know that the original series and 60s TV, you look at those names, there were a few names not in final credits, but the crews were tiny compared to the 80s, much less today. And I'm amazed that they're all doing, you know, analog. They're hand cutting film, the editors are. And people, you know, there's no CG. There's not teams of people to work digitally. You know, the cutting, the delivery of film is a physical thing. The cameras are, you know, everything is physical and analog. And it's just, to me, I'm amazed that they didn't ruin their lives. But you have the TV industry being rough on marriages and families and all of that. And so many divorces. It's like the military almost. Because people are spending 16-hour days, 9 months a year. And that may be why the 10-episode, 12-episode seasons have also found a lot of favor behind the scenes, because people aren't cranking out 26, they're doing 10, 12. But all this to say, Bob was he wasn't just a line producer, hiring people, directors and writers. He gave show notes and script notes and was very involved with story, of which we famously know as Great Memos. And when Gene pulled back and wound up hiring Fred Freiberger, third season, Bob was a little hurt that they didn't consider him to be the showrunner. Like, he's a line producer guy, not a story writer, showrunner type guy.
Yeah.
And that's the pigeonhole he was in. And he had done tons of memos, and he actually pitched the story that became, Captain Christopher, the Air Force pilot UFO. He came up with paper later to show that was actually his story. And then they gave it to somebody else to develop and do. And because he was on staff and, whatever. And he felt a little disrespected, but he was really enamored of Gene and what he was trying to do. And he loved the work, and he was a younger guy then. And then 20 years go by. He's never included in any of the movie circles. Of course, Gene doesn't have the power after the motion picture. He's a little miffed that he's not included in the motion picture reunion. Then Gene doesn't have the power to do that kind of thing and bring his people along. And then when Next Generation comes back around, Gene does reach out to Bob and have him there the first year. And just as he did in third season, eventually, just the sheer demand of the work as a younger man, he was burned out. And Bob left the show halfway through the third season. He did that, too, as a much older man, even wondering if he was insane for coming in at 65 to try to launch this thing that no one knew if it would work. And a lot of people didn't think it would work at all as a sequel, right, and a comeback. But there was a lot of unspoken disappointment and, I don't want to say distrust. There's even a point he says in his book where he and his wife Jackie, who had a great relationship, they were not a casualty of like Gene and Eileen were. But they gave Eileen, they brought her back a souvenir piece of jewelry from some trip they'd been on, and gave it to her right as the Roddenberrys were breaking up. And they always felt a little weird because it's like no one, like within a few days or weeks, they found out they'd filed for divorce. I mean, it was like the last time they saw them together. And he always felt a little weird that they didn't just say, oh, here we can't accept. I mean, somebody didn't say something. And it wasn't like it, but he's went back in later years and said that was kind of like a symbol of how, as much as time as they'd spent together and worked in the trenches and had that, band of brothers feeling, bonding, that there was this in between them. And that when Next Generation happened, he had to look back at all of that he'd been through, not getting used in the first movie, never being talked about, or never having a title above associate producer on the original series, when it should, today we think of associate producers as, Mary Richards in the pilot of Mary Tyler Moore Show. And much less like a junior, and he was far above a junior producer role, even with a smaller staff scale that they used to have. So he had all of that in his mind, but he loved Star Trek. He loved the concept. He loved Gene thinking it up, and he loved that us against the world. We're going to make something better for TV, than the average tripe on TV in the 60s and the 80s. And then the 80s was all about, let's show them it wasn't we can do this again, that it wasn't this random thing that happened, that we can catch lightning in a bottle again. So that was what was motivating. But underneath all that, he went for 20 years with all that. So the fact that he came back to Next Gen and had such a loyalty to Gene before, during, and after, and stayed there through the crazy time, he looked out for himself and he left, and it was physically tiring on him at his age. But he stuck with Gene even through the chaos on the bridge, and he didn't enjoy at all Leonard Mageless, his attorney, that caused so much strife. But he didn't get into he didn't get down in the mud with that. He just stayed above it and kind of rolled his eyes at times, and then got out for his own health. And then to his dying day didn't defend, and Majel and Gene both, even though they were both very human and flawed in their way. So if that resonates with our, I don't know that he had to repair anything with Gene. I think the repairing the relationship was all in his mind, and which is where we find ourselves too. It's like we have to give ourselves forgiveness as long as we're on firm boundaries. And I think that was part of it. And I think coming back to TNG, he told me that the two of them looked at each other like, are you in shape to do this? And it's like, I don't know, are you in shape to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they had that kind of reckoning. And I think once they got to that point, then they moved forward and realized that the world was changing and TV was changing, but they got the show launched, and then they both quickly were not a part of it after they, in various ways. But between the two of them and in Bob's own mind, I think he got to what we're talking about today. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. It reminds me of when I was working at this anxiety disorder clinic in a previous role I had. The position of assistant director opened up. And at the time, I was the senior most clinician there. And it went to my colleague and not me, who was not the senior most person. And she told me that she was getting the role, and I was excited for her, but I was also surprised I didn't get it. And I was hurt by that. In the exact same way that,
And not even told, right? They didn't advertise it. They didn't.
yeah, I mean, I knew that it was probably this position was opening up because the person who previously held it got a new job at another institution. But just like you were talking about what was going on with Bob Justman, it was a similar kind of feeling like, why not me? Like, why wasn't I considered? Or why did it not go to me? And then I thought about it over time. And my boss also mentioned how supportive she was of all the other media stuff I'm doing, my own YouTube channel and all that kind of stuff. And then after a while, I realized, oh, she probably thought I wouldn't have time to do this stuff because I'm doing all this other stuff, and she wants to
Yeah,
support.
people doing your thinking for you.
Right, right. Yeah. Totally. Like, this is going to be a lot of work, and I don't think. I think Ali already has a lot of other work, and I know that's important to him, so I'm not going to burden him with that. And it was like you were saying, like I had to come to my own terms with that to deal with that relationship, because that was kind of like my own stuff that I had to sort of I had to forgive the other person for something that was completely like in my own head. You know, it sounds like a very similar kind of situation there.
Well, I'm curious if, and I don't know if somebody's put this in chat, but a relationship where you're close to someone for many years, and then something happens. It's a working relationship, but also personal too. It's a little bit like Bob and Jean,
Yeah.
but it's a point where suddenly the person who's one of the people in that relationship, kind of for all intents and purposes, drops off the communication. Suddenly they're not so close, and it's one person leading that.
Yeah.
And there's no clue, and there's not outright hostility.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the workflow, but the one of the person who not is feeling ghosted, I'm saying, but I'm thinking of another situation here. I have this friend who, but it's like there's not really outright hostility. It's just the communication just ends, and they even deal with a lot of the same people, and there's no good explanation. It's like going ahead and maintaining that work cycle and that environment and that workspace and dealing with a lot of the same people, and the other people maybe in the queue with you are oblivious to the fact that there's not this connection anymore, the communication anymore.
Yeah.
But where it's not even mutually understood, and one person, and then after a point you say, oh well, I'll just it's sometimes you get into those things where there are mysteries and no one knows or gets it, and
yeah.
I don't know.
And an apology is not what's needed in that situation. It's maybe just compassion or forgiveness, and all that forgiveness just has to happen
all you
in
can
your
do.
hat. Yeah,
Even when you
heart.
say, tell me, it's a little bit like Picard in the scene. He's like, tell me what I did. And well, he gets defiant, but he's kind of saying, what did I do? I'll fix it.
Yeah.
And then he says, I'm not going to fix it.
Yeah.
But it's like
what you did
answer.
caused problems in 2024. As Linda says over here, my boss probably did me a favor, and I think given what my friend had to do in that role, I agree with you. Larry, let's open up those hailing frequencies. There's a few questions that came up that are that came out of this discussion here that I think warrant a little discussion from us, and they're a little different from repairing relationships. So I want to bring back Nathaniel's question. Larry and Ali, was there any opportunity to talk about something that inferred in this episode? Privilege. Both pre and post Q, Picard enjoys a position and prestige that can be described as being inherited both within his family and in terms of being a human. Despite the evil look of Earth, his position is no different. I think that's absolutely true. And the economics of the future are different, but we know that human bias and the psychological biases that are still there still exist. And we see that with, I think that I keep going back to this episode or this example, but we have Picard living at Chateau Picard. And then who is there living at Vasquez Rocks, Larry? Larry, did I lose you again?
Raffi?
Raffi.
No.
Exactly.
Okay, I didn't know
And
if this was like trivia time or what. Yeah, okay.
I think if we look at Raffi and we look at Picard, we can see that clearly these two individuals have led different lives. Now, Raffi has been very successful in her career, successful enough to be Picard's first officer, number one. But she does not enjoy the same status afterwards.
Okay. I've talked about this back when the show aired. Can I just go to this?
Go to it.
There's two or three. There's all kinds of levels, none of which, also to include the fact that they specifically label, being cute. I still need to talk to. I still have questions about this when I get my chance to talk to Michael Chabon. They specifically label Vasquez Rocks as Vasquez Rocks.
Yes.
Which today is a park. It's a county park. It's held in common for the good of all.
Yeah.
And I know that's 300 years in the future or whatever, but did its status change? Now, you see her out there. It's still a wilderness area.
Yep.
She's still off by herself.
Yep.
So my whole thing is, and I did a Tuesdays Live basically called "Can You Force Feed Utopia?" Meaning, people say, okay, number one, they say, oh, she's out there in a trailer and he's got that estate in France. Well, did you see? It's a trailer, and that's not even a pejorative. We talk, oh, it's a trailer trash, whatever. But it's like the best trailer ever compared to, like, she's there. She doesn't want for anything. She's got her connection to the web of the 24. She's sitting there doing her hardcore research and pulling up classified files and helping him research. She's got her contact to her illicit pilot friend, Rios. I mean, she's not, to me, it looks like it's not like she had, like, society and civilization has let her fall to this low.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying.
It's like she's put herself there, and what I meant when I talked before, it's like, I am sure that there were all kinds of services. If she's depressed about the situation she finds herself in, and she worked so hard that she blew up her family, or her family felt blown up, right? Yeah. She's estranged her husband and her son, and we got that. So if her life is in a mess, at what point, and this is a moral thing here we can talk about, at what point does everybody, I mean, I said force feed utopia. Does she keep saying no, no, no? Do they put her in a straitjacket, the equivalent, and say, we're going to therapy, you back to hell?
I totally get what you're saying. And
she's put herself there, but also at the same time, I feel like what's the economy and all that? Picard, I don't think it's like a wealth thing. If there's some historic trust,
this is what I'm getting at. Yeah. This is what I'm getting at. I don't
think it's very fair to apply our 2022 labels to what their situation is.
So even though the economics of the future are different, even though the economics of the future are different, there aren't unlimited resources available on Earth. There isn't unlimited property available on Earth. Real estate is still probably some kind of limited thing. And Chateau Picard, this seems like it's been in his family for a very long time.
Well, we say that, and this show makes the point about that they moved there when he was a young boy.
Yeah.
So
how the heck did that happen?
I don't. It's
right. I forgot about that. Yeah, but
that blows that up.
Yeah, I think there's,
unless it's another part of his family and they moved to that
could be true. That could be true.
Yeah,
I think what we have a lot of data around is, well, there are a lot of datas around. That's one thing. But what we have a lot
they call them Soong type androids. Okay.
What we have a lot of evidence for is Picard comes from a long family that has been regarded well in terms of explorers, science, all that kind of stuff.
He has a family scrapbook of famous Picard.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's where his privilege really is. Now, whether that is privilege that he has had a lot of exposure and had this mother who, like, it, and by the way, I think it's very interesting that they're bringing domestic violence into the story because I know this is an issue that's very important to Patrick Stewart.
Patrick,
Yeah, it's
personally,
something
yes.
something he experienced well. Not experienced well. That's it's something he experienced a lot as a child
Hmm.
himself. But he had this mother who was really encouraging him to be a stargazer, to look up, and he'd been told these stories about his family who have done all of these things. I think that idea of going out and doing something and probably that exposure and knowledge, like that's really the privilege that Picard was given. And I don't think that's equally distributed on Earth. There are reasons why Picard was probably able to rise to the level that he was. And there are a wide variety of circumstances why Rafi is in the situation she probably is. But it is really interesting that despite all the changes in this timeline, Picard is once again a notable figure in this society. And yeah, there's probably a lot of privilege there.
Okay, can we just say that at the beginning of Picard, Raffi is right back commanding a starship
That's true.
18 months later?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that to me points even more to the fact that she's where she is in the trailer because like she is refusing help. And even therapists and whatever Starfleet and Federation know what's going, or maybe at the time we meet her, it's been what, 12 years since the synths blew up, the synth project blew up. So if she's been on a downward spiral for 12 years and her son is a doctor out of medical school. So if he was really young when her life blew up and quickly spiraled down, maybe we're catching her at the bottom of that, and it was very redemptive for Picard to snatch her
Yeah,
up.
I
So I
think
mean, I'm just saying we're in points in time here, but the other thing, because time is going by, the other
yeah.
thing about privilege and Picard, totally apart from the whole dynamic of the he and Raffi. Remember, Picard was like an up and coming. Remember, he was like he was a roustabout when he was. Remember stabbing the Nausicaan?
Yes.
There's a show you may want to watch and review sometime. It's called Tapestry, but it's like the road not so if he calms down and doesn't stab the Nausicaan, he winds up with a boring, mediocre Starfleet life. He took the risk, he paid for it with the artificial heart, and he had the career he did. But even more so, what people keep forgetting is remember how he was like the second or third officer on the Stargazer, and his captain, I don't think he was first off. He might have been a very young first officer, and that may not have ever been spelled out. But he was a junior officer on Stargazer. Everybody dies. He takes command in a crisis, pulls it off, and does so well that they give him command of the ship permanently. They don't bring in a permanent captain again. And he is captain of the Stargazer for 22 years until the Ferengi
Yeah.
incident that no one knew was Ferengi. So if if you're talking about in the moment and you're talking about his arrogance and his, he does whoever it was that was mentioning going through everything in TNG with that privilege. Well, remember he proved himself,
I,
if not over and over, apparently over and over again, but at the beginning, he proved himself in a huge way.
I think
And if you
there's
to say he rode that for 30 years, then I
no,
guess
I don't think we're saying he wrote that. I think he has benefited from Charlotte says this over here.
yeah, but I'm just saying a lot of things he earned. I don't think it's
He
like
can be
he
no,
privileged it.
I think he can be both a an amazing officer and someone who's really benefited from
Right,
his
right, right.
ancestors. I think both those things are true. Charlotte says he's the ancestor of colonizers, and frankly, most of us white people are. But she also mentions that. Let me pull up the
Which he talked
comment
about on
here.
Dorvan 5 with the
Yeah,
Native American colony. Yeah.
even if they moved there when he was a boy, doesn't mean there isn't generational wealth
Yeah.
involved. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing Nathaniel mentions here. Aren't people waking up all the time to find that they have benefited from war and exploitation in the distant past? And I think that's really what we're talking about. There was this great article in the New York Times about how redlining
Oh
different
yeah.
neighborhoods has like it's continued to persist, and they showed the environmental impact of how redlining
Do we
has.
have another hour for? I mean, we're getting into
I
some stuff.
know.
Yeah.
But they're showing the Bay Area, the region here where I live, of how redlining also maps on to the quality of the environment that you live in, and all of these things are still having an impact here. I think all of that stuff is very much true, and that's not something that Star Trek has really dived into. I think it's a very complex topic, but it's I think I'm thankful for Nathaniel for bringing up this question
Well,
because
all the cities are perfect in the future, didn't you? Don't you see that?
yeah, and I mean this gets back to I think the closest example we have of this, or the closest it's been evoked in Star
It's
Trek, really gets back to DS9. And maybe Picard will do this,
mm,
but when the crew get back to 21st century Earth,
right. The Bell riots.
the Bell
Mhm.
riots, they see what's going on here. Like Larry, there's going to be a difference in impact for the future ancestors of the people in the Bell riots versus maybe the Picard family during that time. And what is the impact of people who have been scientists and explorers for generations and have been able to pass on the benefits of that versus people who are in the Bell riots who maybe do have some economic opportunity to rise up but also don't have the benefit of a family like Picard. I think that's an interesting discussion. I don't know if we're going to see that discussion on Star Trek, but
Well, and what does the replicator slash post scarcity, economy revolution do for generational inequality?
yeah, I mean that is a great
Did I just
discussion.
say? Yeah.
Yeah, how would things change and how would things not change as a result of scarcity being gone as it relates to generational wealth? Because it's not just about money, but it's about
Well, it's
experience,
great that you
knowledge, and
bring that up
exposure.
because I'm about to present my academic doctoral thesis on. No, it's a huge subject. We talk about it's one thing to go, they don't have any money in the future. Well, it's post scarcity because replicators and you can make gold as easily as you make lead, so nothing matters anymore. It's all just a molecular pattern and blah blah blah. And now it's all about stewarding resources that are there and dealing with other cultures that aren't as enlightened as us and blah blah blah. But at that point, it's kind of like, where did Stardate start? It's like,
Yeah.
what was the point? And how? And not only like if we were all at an equal point to flip into the new way, that's one thing. But if everybody was at different, it's like racial. Now it's like if people were at a zero, if they're in a deficit on something, when everybody flips over, how do you not perpetuate the
Oh, I
deficit?
mean, this is we have no time to talk about this, but we're talking about repairing relationships, and this gets
This is no time
to
to talk
talk
about. We
about
have
time.
no time. Yeah.
Repairing relationships. Now we're getting into the realm of restorative justice, and in the United States, slavery being this. We are
Yeah.
still dealing with in so many ways. If we just talk about the economic impact of slavery, we're still dealing with that in the United States. We haven't.
And the dealings with the native peoples that were here
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
On that note, we could spend so
We're
much
ending
more
Life
time.
Support Live, where we're about to
Yeah.
start our new weekly podcast talking about
Restorative justice in the final frontier. So, Larry, with our theme song now playing,
okay.
next week is
Thank
a
you,
very
thank
special
you.
episode.
Yes.
Folks, we are doing it live in person together in the same place, in the same time and space. Larry's coming up here for
Yep.
our finale. Larry will be here at the Psych Show studios here in Northern California. We're going to be together for our finale of the weekly format of Life Support Live. Until then, Larry.
And we'll be part of the virtual TrekCon
Yes.
3 program. So we'll be double duty as one of their, nothing different for us, but we'll be in their schedule. So we'll hopefully have a lot of new faces.
So, folks, please let us know what you'd like us to do for that finale episode. If you have any requests, please let us know. We're going to be taking your ideas all week long. Until then, Larry, where can people find more from Trekland?
LarryNemecek.com. We are opening up the Trekland Tour day tours, treklandtreks.com. I'm going to do a panel at WonderCon on Sunday at 1 o'clock about the reemergence of Trek, the boom years in fandom. That's in Anaheim on April 3rd, on the Sunday of WonderCon. That just got confirmed this week. And we're doing the day tour out to Valley of Fire. If anyone's going to Vegas Trek the Thursday before the con opens on Friday. Right? No, the Wednesday before it opens on Thursday in August. So check LarryNemecek.com and Larry Nemecek on Twitter. And where you're watching me right now, please like and subscribe to YouTube, everybody.
Amazing. What is happening here at the Psych Show? You know, there is new Psych Show stuff coming.
Besides gaining a new little one at the Mattu household.
Yeah. There's a new life form beaming in sometime soon in May. But I'm also in the middle of constructing.
Is that how it works?
I'm constructing a little set, because this room is going to become my daughter's room, and my daughter's room is going to become my son's room, and so the Psych Show is going to be moving to a little new space. So there will be new content soon after the new life form. But folks, I will be back here with Larry live. Larry's going to be sitting here next to me.
I feel like singing the life form song.
Until then, folks, we will see you in 1 week for our finale episode. Until then, live long and prosper, my friends.
Spread the word, everybody. Trek well.